Welcome to attendance. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to this hybrid meeting of the Cross-Cutting Resources Business Overall and Scrutiny Committee, which is open to the press and public. Hello. This meeting is to be viewed by members of the press and public today. Therefore, I would welcome anybody who may be viewing remotely. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I have had no requests for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please could members refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate whether you wish to speak. I believe the thing is indicate to the clerk in the chamber if you want to as well, and as I'm chairing remotely from that thing. May I also remind members that as per statutory guidance under Section 4 of the Local Governments Act, Wales Measure 2011 and our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending a meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So can I ask you if you please use your cameras for the duration of the meeting. Please remember to keep your microphones muted when you are not talking. Otherwise, people can hear what happens in your house. I've put that bit on the end because it's true. Right, apologies. Rachel, what have we had any apologies? Neil, sorry, I've got here. Do we have any apologies for this afternoon's meeting?
Yeah, afternoon, Chair. We've had a few apologies. So we've had apologies from Councillor Liam Cowles, Councillor Carl Gordon, Alan Slade, and Councillor Nathan Yole, and Councillor Lucy Williams as well.
Anybody got anybody else they know about that might not be in that lot? Deafening silence, brilliant. Thank you. Right, next item on the agenda: declarations of interest. Rebecca, can you please take through declarations of interest? I'm assuming that it's as they come up rather than anything else.
Yes, Chair, I don't anticipate that members will have any declarations on this particular item, but if you do have any during discussions, then please just declare them. Thank you.
I anticipated that. Thank you very much. Okay, items number 3, I believe it's looking at it, it's 3 pages, if I remember rightly. I did have it, and I'm sure you've all had a glance at them before. From the last meeting, which will have been the Tuesday 14th of November, which was I believe the budget one, which I wasn't at. So we'll go quickly through page 3.
Chair.
Yeah.
I'm not in the attendance because I was ill. I do believe I sent my apologies, but I'm not recorded as apologising.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So record Rose Siobhan on there. Thank you. So it's page, and that's the value of going through the pages 4, 5, and 6. It was a very brief set of minutes on there. But anybody got anything else to add on it? Obviously, no. Deafening silence. Good. So can we have a affirmation of that? If we may, please put your hands up.
Move.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody against? No, I can't see anybody. Nobody. Anything else on that? So thank you. You're unanimous. Thank you very much. Action sheet, and we've got 3 items on the action sheet. Anybody got any observations about that?
If I can just come in there quickly, Chair. So you'll see the first action was with regard to the recommendations, and there were no formal recommendations from the last committee. Then the last 2 actions on the action sheet, I did send around to members that additional information yesterday. Thank you.
You did, and I had a look at that. It comes. Anybody want any questions on that? Bearing in mind that we did have that sent round, and it was requested.
Move we accept that.
Thank you. Who said that?
Rose Siebel.
Thank you, Rose. Everybody agreed to that? Thank you very much. Now, right, we're on to the meat of the matter, which is, and I'll say what it says here. You realise I've got a script here. The report, it's Strategic Equality Plan 2024 to 28, and I'm sure you've given us a pre-read, but what it says in my script is the report aims to define the scope of the Strategic Equality Plan 2024 to 2028. Can I firstly welcome all the officers and the executive member for corporate governance to the meeting, and can you introduce yourselves before we go on, because obviously you're in the chamber and we're online, so a quick round of introduction is a good idea, please. They weren't expecting that, were they?
Thank you, Councillor Ashley. My name is Kate Williams. I'm the Group Manager within the Public Services Support Unit.
Good afternoon, Chair. I'm Stephen Hanu, Qualities, Partnerships and Policy Officer in PSSU.
Thank you, Stephen.
Good afternoon, Chair. I think you know who I am. I'm Peter Jones, the Corporate Member for Corporate Governance, the Executive Member for Corporate Governance and Performance.
And you won't be giving a long speech today, will you?
It's quite long, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley. It's Dave Leach here, Strategic Director for Adults and Communities.
Thank you. And we've got a few online as well, haven't we?
There's me as well, Chair, Jason Lewis, Director of Corporate Services.
Sorry, Jason.
That's all right.
Good afternoon, Chair. Rachel Jarrett, Strategic Director, Economy and Environment.
Thank you. I really do. And anybody else we've got online?
I'm Chris Hunt. I'm the Regional Community Cohesion Coordinator.
I thought I saw somebody else on here. Thank you very much indeed, and welcome. Thank you for coming up. So, well, I know I will. Thank you for. So we now. It says now. I finally welcome all the officers, exec member for corporate governance and performance to the meeting, and you've now introduced yourselves. Now I hand over to Councillor Jones, and he will give us his summary as to what and Stephen, it says, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and be brief, Chair, but you know what I'm like, so we'll see how we get on.
We know what you like, so let's give it to us as it were.
Okay. The Council's Strategic Equality Plan guides the Council efforts to advance equality, diversity and inclusion, and demonstrates our ongoing commitment to meeting the public sector equality duties and the Equality Act of 2010. Our Strategic Equality Plan for 2024 to 2028 is due for publication by the 1st of April 2024, and it is a statutory obligation to set and publish our equality objectives by this date. So we're talking about quite a tight time frame here. Today's scrutiny session is an opportunity as part of the consultation process for members to consider Torfaen Council's proposed equality objectives for the next 4 years and our role in tackling inequality in Torfaen. Torfaen County Borough Council remains committed to the principles of inclusion, fairness, equity of outcome and social justice, and we strive to ensure that this is demonstrated in our employment practices, our behaviours and, importantly, in our service delivery. Whether we are talking about staff or working with the public, it is important that we allocate the resources and opportunities each person needs to receive an equal outcome. Put simply, equity means understanding that not everyone starts in the same place, and it is only fair to make appropriate adjustment based on individual needs. As one of the borough's biggest employers, tackling inequality starts at home, with consideration of the way we employ people, the way we support the development and progression of staff in a way that is fair and equitable, and also how we set our expectations of our staff to ensure they respect the rights of everyone they deal with. In the workplace, equity involves ensuring that all employees have access to resources, opportunities and fair compensation, regardless of their age, sex, sexual orientation, ethnicity, beliefs, their relationship status, whether they are transitioning gender or are pregnant. In inclusive workplaces, all employees feel valued, involved and supported, which in turn cultivates trust, motivation and greater job satisfaction. Now more than ever, it is important for organisations to demonstrate a commitment to creating diverse and inclusive work environments for their employees. Being able to demonstrate an inclusive and diverse working environment where people can be their authentic self-beliefs, recruitment helping an organisation attract skilled people with a wide range of lived experiences and cognitive diversity. It can help avoid bias and groupthink and in turn supports the provision of fair services delivered with empathy and understanding of people's needs. As we face further financial challenges, decreasing budgets and staff resources, it is essential that elected members agree at the Council meeting in February to a set of equality objectives that provide clear areas of focus for our staff teams to address. We talk about fairness, and this is only fair on them. The equality objectives and the development action plan that we will agree in February must find the balance between being realistic and achievable, but also aspirational and fully expressive of our determination to tackle inequality. I will hand over now to Stephen Honeywell, Equalities Partnership and Policy Officer, to say a bit more about the proposed equality objectives and our rationale. Over to you, Stephen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jones, and thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to provide some further background information and rationale for our proposed objectives. I don't get an opportunity to do this often, so I'm afraid I'm going to have a few things to say as well and take this opportunity. But 4 years ago, we consulted widely with the public, including protected groups, to establish a strategic equality plan for Torfaen Council that presented a strongly supported set of equality objectives. This was published on the 1st of April 2020. Significant progress has been made over the life course of the current strategic equality plan, and each year Council have been presented with an annual equality report that documents the key activities and impacts. During early implementation, we did lose some considerable time to the COVID pandemic, when our resources were stretched thinly and focused on pandemic response and the immediate needs and well-being of our communities and our newly remote workforce. Consequently, whilst many of the strategic equality plan's actions have been completed, we have not yet achieved quite everything that our current plan sets out to. And consequently, some of the current actions remain relevant, and indeed some are essentially designed really as ongoing actions. Considering their continued relevance, we have taken the existing objectives as our starting point, but made a number of tweaks to create a new set of 6 proposed objectives for 2024 to 2028 that you will find listed in the report. We believe this has resulted in a strengthened set of objectives for the next 4 years that incorporate the current legislative and social landscapes. We are currently in the process of consulting on these, whilst reviewing the status of the current existing actions that sit under the objectives and assessing their ongoing relevance. We are also considering a developing list of potential new actions that reflect the new policy landscape and the understanding of need that we have developed over the 4-year period. And a lot has happened in those 4 years, as well as the profound impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, when we saw disproportionate impacts on people with disabilities and people from minority ethnic backgrounds. We have seen the impacts of the UK's departure from the European Union, the period of high inflation, as well as the economic impact of the war in Ukraine, all contextual factors that have compounded in existing inequality. The death of George Floyd and the emergence of the Black Lives Matter movement shone a light on the injustices faced by black people, not only in America but around the world. It reminded us all that we must seek out and address this injustice that has been embedded in our societies for far too long. During the 4-year period, we have seen commitments made by the Welsh Government to address persistent inequalities through their Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan and the LGBTQ+ Action Plan, and momentum is indeed gathering towards a forthcoming Disability Equality Action Plan. I've been to a number of conferences, webinars and network meetings that have provided insight, and we are privileged to be able to learn from Welsh Government's co-production approach and the communities engaged in developing these plans, who are keen to work with us, but only if we are serious about change. Part of our current work involves exploring how we can play our part by delivering local actions that contribute to delivering on the aspirations of these plans. In those 4 years, we have acquired many documents, reports, plans and strategies that are helping to shape the developing action plan. These include the Institute of Health Equity's Building a Fairer Gwent report that was commissioned by Gwent Public Services Board, the aforementioned Anti-Racist Wales and LGBTQ+ action plans, both of which are developed with extensive stakeholder engagement and come with a level of public awareness and expectation. We have also had Welsh Government's Period Dignity Action Plan, their Guide to Fair Work and a refreshed Community Cohesion Programme. Most recently, the Equality and Human Rights Commission have published the Is Wales Fairer report for 2023, which provides insight into both areas of progress in tackling inequality in Wales and areas that remain a concern. All of these documents suggest areas of focus, things we could do to make a difference, and it's up to us as people living and working in Torfaen to consider the nuances of our local needs and decide where we focus our efforts and our resources. Hopefully today's session will help us do that. It is an opportunity for you to give your views on what is needed to support both our workforce and our communities, and to ask members of the leadership team who are in attendance how the teams are contributing to this agenda. I know, because I've seen it firsthand, that we have many strongly committed allies within the workforce who go out of their way to ensure that changes are made when inequality is highlighted. We need to build on this and ensure that throughout the organisation we have people who act inclusively and take action not only to address inequality, but to seek it out. And because this is the only way we will have sufficient impact to mitigate negative external factors and see positive change. I'd just like to finish by pointing out that legally and morally our services must work for and protect the rights of the people and groups covered by the Equality Act. And I would like to once again thank members who recently attended the WLGA's training on this, because your role, particularly in considering impact assessments before council decisions, is an important one. And I thank you for being here today and the evident commitment to this cause. Thank you, Chair, and I'll hand back to you now to lead us towards member questions.
Okay. I've got on my sheet here, we start the question and it's pretty tight and it's straightforward. Go to page 14 and it's point 4, information and discussion. I got that right, haven't I, Rebecca?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, right. And the question is, it's laid out for us, it's what the officers want, which is, and it's not a simple question, it's a general question to start with, which is, how will the new strategic equality plan feed into our county plan, other strategies and well-being of future generation objectives? And I've got on here questions. Come on then, let's see. And I've already got Jason O'Connell and Rose Seaborn. So Jason, please kick off.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the brief, both very useful. I've got a question on the objectives that have been set. From my point of view, the objectives are something that you aspire to achieve, so something that we currently don't have. How are they going to be measured in terms of success? How will you know when you've achieved the objective? Specifically, Objective 1, Torfaen County Borough Council as an equal opportunity employer. Okay, that doesn't suggest that it's an actual objective. That's more of a statement. So I'm just wondering what the aspiration there is to turn that into more of something that can be achieved.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connell. In that regard, I think the intention is that we develop an action plan under the set of equality objectives that look at, very specific and, where possible, measurable impacts that we will monitor in much the same way as we've done for the last 4 years. That will be kind of conversation for the service planning process that is, getting underway, and embedding those sort of measurable actions within team service planning and reporting that sort of in line with the county plan.
Are you okay with that, Jason?
I think so. I think you can put a bit more meat on the bone, if I'm honest. Again, the objectives and the actions are obviously linked. The actions are going to say what you're going to do to achieve the objective, but it's not clear to me, at least, how you know when that objective has been met. How do you know that your workforce is aware of and understands the importance of equality and diversity?
I would like to add that we're going to bring this up as a second question. I think there's a question. This question is more about the overall county plan, strategies and well-being, how we're going to feed into it. But please continue if you want.
Yeah, Jason's going to come in on that point, Councillor Ashley.
Yeah.
Councillor O'Connell, it's a fair point you make, and I think there will inevitably be a number of tangible actions that will be developed subsequent to this meeting, that each of which will have some success factors attached to it, so that collectively they may add up to an improved position from a sort of a workforce perspective, but each of them will have more specific improvement objectives attached. Now, we'll be working on those subsequently as officers. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. I think it does.
Thank you, Jason, for kicking off. Rose?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of points. A couple of points that were made at at council yesterday was updating the constitution in line with our new plans, and there was, I think, a disability question on access, and I think although we've got these plans coming, we need to keep our constitution updated with any new initiatives that we bring in. So that's just one point that I picked up at council yesterday. The other point at council was the question that Councillor David Thomas brought, which is equal opportunities for our businesses within Torfaen, and that's perhaps what we might look at as well. But my main question is about work-life balance of our staff. And the work-life balance of our staff measured since there's been home working, so it's since COVID that my question is, how do we know that our staff are clocking off at the right time or clocking on at the right time even? And how do we know that they're not working till 10 o'clock in the evening and that there is a work-life balance for our staff?
Well, then who can answer that one?
That's probably me, Chair, again.
Well,
I suppose it's a tricky one to answer directly. I think that there are a number of things that we would be looking out for to make sure that our staff are, first of all, doing the roles that they are required to do, and that isn't necessarily putting the hours in a traditional sense, but looking more at what actually staff deliver and do tangibly. And certainly the council, even pre-pandemic, was moving and is moving to a position where that is more of the relationship that we have with our staff, is that a lot of it is based on trust and a reliance that managers are holding staff to account at that local level. More anecdotally, we're not seeing any evidence that staff are working reasonable hours. I think staff, the message you were getting from staff is that they value the greater flexibility they have now to manage, balance their work and home life, and that is much appreciated. So we're seeing, I think, a more contented workforce. But that's more of an anecdotal position, Councillor Seaborn, rather than sort of a measured, a response that I've got measured evidence to back up.
Is that okay, Rose?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to keep our eye on the ball so that our staff are not working exceptionally hard at home using their own appliances, etc., electric, and whether or not we're keeping our eye that we're being equal and accountable to those that are working in the civic and those at home.
Right. Thank you there. I've got Councillor Elizabeth Haynes, followed by Councillor Dave Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the policy and now this revised new one, but I think that for me there's sort of I have to question underneath this that the individual policies are mindful of this direction. We've got a lot about disabled, the poor, women, etc. in there, but there seems to be a lack of faith or inequality due to faith or lack of faith in it, as far as, and I've had a really good read over the last couple of days of this, and I'm a little bit concerned that we have all of the nice objectives listed down, but underneath all of that are the policies that our staff follow, our staff have to follow. Are they being followed? And I can give you an example here of one that follows, the one that concerns me, and this is about non-faith children wishing to attend faith schools and having the access to buses, and because some children are not of that faith, they are being excluded from that bus service. Now, inequality and exclusion based on faith or lack of it shouldn't be happening today. I have raised this with officers a couple of times, and what I am told is that it will be looked at some point, but that isn't good enough, because if we have lists of these objectives and lists of all these strategies, then these policies should be being revised, and we should be looking to change them if there is evidence of inequality. And that's one that really bothers me. Exclusion due to faith or lack of it shouldn't be happening in 2023. I'd like that. I'd like faith listed as part of within this strategy, because there's no actual word of faith in there. There's lots of other words, but there's none about the inequality due to faith or lack of it.
Okay, who's going to answer that one?
If I can come in on the general point, and then I'll allow Kate and Stephen to come in around the specific question on faith. I think it's a really good point, Councillor Haynes, in relation to that follow-through from this overarching set of objectives that we've got into some of the other activity that we have. And I know conversations that the team have picked up and will now be picking up through the leadership team are about how do we make sure that the objectives in this plan filter through into the service plans that we have that dictate the activity that we're doing. We're already capturing it in relation to other strategies. That's the purpose of that integrated wellbeing assessment. The important thing now is that we make sure that we're capturing it at that service level. Now, that will sometimes come with measures for us to be able to track and monitor, and I know Jason spoke about that earlier. Other times, there will be times when we do still get inquiries saying, actually, we're not quite sure that you've interpreted this right, or we disagree with the outcome that you've come to there. So please do raise those if you do feel that we're not getting it right on a one-to-one individual basis. But that's how we're going to make sure that there's that flow through into the service plan activity. I'll let Kate come through now on the specifics around faith.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Just kind of wanted to reiterate that a lot of this is within the consultation process, so really glad that these kind of things are kind of being brought up at this stage then, so we can influence the strategic equality plan going forward. And just to kind of assure members that the strategic equality plan that we're proposing for the next 4 years sits very much in place with lots of our other strategies. It's really, there's synergy with our county plan, there's a lot of synergies with the Marmot principles that we're working towards, so that this isn't a silo of just equalities at the side of all of our policies, that we're embedding this throughout. We're working closely with the education departments on their strategic equality plans and how they fit, so some of those issues that you picked up there, Councillor Haynes, in relation to school transport and things like that, we'll be picking up directly with education. But absolutely see that we can kind of embed some of the specific protected characteristics more in with that. And then
thanks for that, Kate. But this was more of a transport issue from not from education. I've had numerous communications with them, and nothing is being resolved, even though I flagged up the inequality due to lack of faith. There we go.
Thank you there, Councillor Haynes. Dave Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points, really, and partly sort of responding to some of those earlier questions. The first bit was really, is there still going to be the requirement for equality impact assessments to be done as sort of part of the normal reporting process within Council? I would assume so. That's the first point. Do you want me to do all, or do you want to answer each one? Fine.
So we work very closely with the team on the integrated wellbeing assessment. So there's lots that will be covered within that, and the equality impact assessment forms part of that. So we look at how we're meeting the requirements of a whole host of duty, if that's around kind of climate emergency, if that's around the future generations, it's around our county plan. All of those are in the integrated wellbeing assessments, which we're always kind of revising and making that fit for purpose to make sure that we're complying with the equality duty, but also then that includes looking at the socio-economic duty. There's a whole host of things in there, so that's captured in the integrated wellbeing assessment.
Sorry, if I can just come in on that one as well. The key here, and part of that subtle shift with it, is it's important that we do that assessment at a strategic level, so that we're making sure that the strategies and the policies that we're adopting are compliant, And then when it comes to the day-to-day delivery, it then gives us an opportunity to raise when it's not in compliance with that that's come forward. So it avoids that replication and duplication of some of the activity that you will have already seen. You'll be saying, well, hang on, I've heard that 10 times already. You're just telling me the same information. So the key is going to be getting it right at the strategy level.
Could I come in there, because I did ask members to be, Janet, I will bring you in a minute. The question there asked the strategic equality plan into county plan and the wellbeing and the other plans. How do you propose to link that all in? That was the question I was trying to get members to go for. David's just raised part of it. It's obviously a PSB and a council type question. That how do you get the linkage and the reporting back on that? That's the sort of thing I would ask on that.
Yeah, happy to come in there, Chair. We've been doing a lot of work with quite a lot of our plans now to make sure that, as I said earlier, that they're not sitting in silo outside of our county plan and what we're doing. So a lot of the outcomes of our county plan, a lot of the objectives that sit within that will be the same things that we're looking at within our strategic equality plan. So making sure that they're aligned, we're reporting in the right ways, covering those objectives. And also I think the reporting mechanisms that we've got for that will then fit through to our service planning and down into our team planning, so that there's a synergy throughout, so that the equalities objectives are not sitting outside of the county plan but within it.
That's the answer the Chief Executive gave the other day as well, isn't it? So it's reporting back more than this yearly thing that we do with this committee. Would that be that?
Yes.
Yeah. Dave Williams, did you want to come back? That's what I won't get him told as well.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. It was just... Sorry,
I didn't mean to butt in there, but it was just I was trying to draw this back into what this particular question before we go to the next question. And I got Janet Jones coming here as well, by the way.
A fair point, Chair, but I was trying to sort of respond to a couple of the earlier points as well. The first bit was really in relation to the question that was asked by my colleague, Councillor Seaborn. Are you seeing requests for reasonable adjustments from staff as a result of working from home? Are there any specific support measures that are being put to staff working at home? And finally, in terms of that monitoring arrangement, are there any intention to do any kind of staff survey to get some data on that?
I think I'll probably start at the back end first, if that's okay. We're about to we're in the process of preparing for a new staff survey in the new year. We carried out a number of surveys during the pandemic, specifically around the experience that staff were having with working from home. Issues around reasonable adjustments came up. Improvements were made so that I think we're in a position now that everybody who's working from home has got the right set of equipment to fulfil that role effectively. And that when they don't, they're able to come to their manager, and we do have provision for equipment. We do have a catalogue of provision for equipment that is available to staff to allow them to do so.
Is that okay, David?
Yeah, I was also picking up on the point that Councillor O'Connell made about monitoring and how do you know, so therefore that's where the question was coming from.
Right, should I go? You finished, have you, David?
For now, Councillor.
Yeah, I thought you might. Councillor Janet Jones.
Thanks, Chair. It's a point that Kate brought up about consultation. Who have we been consulting with, please? How have we consulted with groups, individuals? It would be nice to know where they're collecting the information from.
Question. Who wants that one?
So I can hear a little bit of feedback there, Chair, but it seems manageable. Yeah, just to come back on that, Councillor Jones. The consultation is a 12-week consultation. We've produced easy read versions to give out to groups. Some of the groups we've been out to include the 50+ forums, which I've personally engaged with, and there were hard copies of those provided to those who aren't on, digitally excluded members who aren't online. Torvine Access Forum as well. We continue to engage with as officer level and also with elected members attending those sessions, and I've talked to them about the consultation and sharing that with them. We have been a little bit under-resourced in sort of engagement capacity, led by the sort of communications team. We've had new people start last week and a new age-friendly communities officer, and we're keen to get them out as much as we can this side of Christmas now in that engagement process. I will add, however, that all the kind of stuff coming through from Welsh Government has added very extensive stakeholder engagement with the LGBTQ+ action plan and with things like the Anti-Racist Wales action plan. As I mentioned in my introduction, I've been out to conferences, engaged with members of those communities and really heard from them what they want to see. So there's been a mixture of sort of local engagement and that sort of regional and sort of national engagement as well, really, to try and understand best practice.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
Go on.
We have organisations like Societies for the Blind, because not everybody with disabilities can be seen. So are we thinking of contacting those groups? And wheelchair users?
Yeah, there's been, we'd have certain networks, are you probably aware of the Blenavon Wheelers group? That, one of our residents, who's the Vice Chair of the Torvine Access Forum, is engaged with, so we can reach out to those groups. And I think part of that objective about involving people will include sort of continuing to try and build and develop those networks over the life of the next strategic equality plan. And I think that's something that, that we will focus on. Our work on a regional footprint with the Gwent PSB has involved significant engagement over the last year or so with various communities of interest as well across Gwent. And I think as public services, we can look at that sort of collectively to make sure that we're reaching out to people, giving them the opportunity to, engage with us as much as they wish to, really, and on the topics that were of importance to them. And I think that's what that sort of objective is really about.
Okay, thanks, Steve. It would be a shame to miss any groups. So if we think of anybody, are we all right to contact you?
Absolutely, yeah, please do.
Okay, thanks, Jay. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Janet. That was an interesting line. Right, I don't think anybody else is going on this first line of question. The second line of questioning I got, which you've been approached on a bit, and I'd like to welcome some, is members, do you have any questions on 4.4, the strategic equality plan objectives, which you've got 1 to 6 there, and you've encroached on it, but it's an interesting set of objectives. I'd welcome some questions on that. Your opportunity, those you haven't spoke, to have a look at that little lot and ask some really interesting questions. You've got employment, you've got access, you've got facilitating safe inclusion and inclusive communities. You've got our part to deliver aspirations on anti-racist, LBGT and all the rest of it. Involve people in communities in matter that are important to them. And you've got the council complying with things and Welsh language. Please, let's have some good questions on that. David, come on. You normally kick off on that one. Colette Thomas, I've got here.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at Objective 1. I'm just wondering, what are we doing to promote women in more senior management posts? I see we've got 75% of our workforce are women, but I see very little sort of senior management vacant posts for women. Even looking around the table today, I think I can only see 2 women in senior posts. Would that be Rachel and Kate presenting to us today? Just wonder, what are our plans to promote women to more senior levels?
I think we obviously within the organisation appoint on the basis of competence. So there's never any, and I'm confident there's never any gender bias within our recruitment processes. And I think the pattern of employment at each of the grades is is not untypical within any large organisation. So I don't think we're looking at any inherent bias within what we do here, Councillor Thomas, to be truthful. And I think we're looking at a snapshot with those figures rather than the broader workforce. It obviously excludes very large schools-based workforce, whereas you'll appreciate there are a lot of head teachers within that within that workforce that are female. I don't need it necessarily paint a picture. I think we've certainly got a responsibility to make sure that we provide an opportunity for everybody, regardless of gender, to thrive within the organisation, achieve their best, and I certainly don't believe that there is any barriers that the organisation is putting in place to prevent women from reaching the top of the organisation. And of course, it fluctuates. We have and did have for many years a female chief executive. So I don't necessarily think that the current position necessarily reflects a biased organisation.
So I just wonder whether we're doing all we can to support women then.
I think we can always do more, and inevitably that's going to be a conversation that we will have in terms of the development of this strategy in more detail.
Colette, the Chief Executive, would like to respond to one. I sort of natural enough for him not to. Stephen?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a very interesting question, and I think it's the right question to ask. It is difficult when you take a snapshot of a relatively small number of people. The statistics can be quite misleading. And I was concerned about this myself, actually, when I looked at the statistics. So I did a piece of work just last week, which was to take a look at the those that the council employ across all areas, and the actual numbers are as follows. From grades 11 through 18, which are group managers right the way through to the strategic director level. I exclude the chief exec role out of that because there's only one of me, and that would be clearly I'm male, and that I can't do anything about that. But it's 62% of our workforce, grades 11 to 18, are female. 62%, 38% male. If we then look at grades 14 to 18, it's 52% female and 48% male. So when you look at those statistics across as a whole council, it paints a picture, really, I think, that actually we're already, some of the activity and some of the measures that we've already put in place to ensure that our recruitment processes are fair and supported for all for those with from across all areas. I think that paints a very positive picture for the council. The other thing that's just worth remembering is that we are developing leadership outside of the formal roles of leadership teams. So the Rebel Torvine activity that you'll be aware of, which we've had about 40 respondents come back to a recent invitation to join the Rebel Torvine groups, which are looking for leaders within our authority that are not necessarily currently within formal leadership roles, but these will be our leaders of the future. I've got no doubt about it, and we're trying to sort of support them to explore opportunities to be a part of that. Well, of those that have requested to be a part of Rebel Torvine, 65% of them are women. So again, this paints a very positive picture as to how women are able to come forward, even in formal roles, and actually when you look at the council as a whole, we've got a pretty balanced workforce, and in fact, as I said, from that grades 11 through 18, it's a majority women by a considerable amount, 62% to 38%.
Thank you there. Who have I got next? Have I got anybody in the chamber next before I go on to Liz Haynes?
It's Councillor Williams, Chair, but I think Councillor Haynes has also got a hand up.
We do Councillor Williams and then Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm presuming we're still on 4.4, the proposed strategic.
We're on 4.4. Yes, we've only got a few sections here, so get as many questions in as you can on each of the sections, please.
No, just two observations really. One, I hark back to the comments from Councillor O'Donnell, and in many respects, the first objective in many respects I think is an aim, and other things are objectives that perhaps support that. It's an observation, because I don't think you can measure that in quite the same way as you can start to measure some of the other things like building accessibility and inclusive communities. 2 points to that then really. First is the design of workplaces I think is particularly important, and I think that's something that we should take ahead, particularly taking account of perhaps some of the questions that came up in relation to the refurbishment of this building, and perhaps the sort of late adjustments that were made would suggest that perhaps we should have been more aware of the equalities issue a little earlier. I've just put that there as a point of reflection. Secondly, I think there's also the reference was made to the question that came to Council yesterday, and I think it is that culture as well about any comments or complaints are learning opportunities, and therefore that's part of our monitoring process, I would suggest, that will be helpful going forward. And finally, I think in relation to the involving people and communities in matters that are important to them, etc., I think there's also, we need to be prepared, I presume this is a part of what we're looking to do, to outreach to meet citizens where they are, because sometimes that's easier for them than asking them to come to where we are. So just some observations rather than anything else, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to just add to it, slightly different, but we actually have in our community hard to reach groups that are not necessarily employed. I mean, I'm thinking of people with autism and others such. And is there an opportunity for this council to engage with and other groups with disabilities, and maybe as the council is a large employer and actually fairly sympathetic to these groups, whether accessibility to those sort of groups and employment. I know we're going through austerity at the moment and probably tightening our belts, but it does seem council and other large employees in our equality assessments maybe can reach to people like this, because if you look at their employment opportunities, they are extremely poor, and it seems an opportunity for us to be able to employ those groups, whether it's a protected characteristic or whether there's an opportunity to get them, because obviously government policy and Welsh government policy is going in that direction. I add that in there just as on top of what David's made, because quite often go this direction, go together. So I wonder who can answer that one.
So if I could just come in there, Chair. We previously said with our county plan that it's very closely aligned with the Marmot principles, and one of the areas that we're looking at there is creating fair employment and good work for all. And I think there's a lot that the council are doing with its employability and skills strategy to look at, and I think it's the fair employment and work for all within that. So I think there's lots of work that are being done within those departments to make sure that we're reaching all of those groups that you kind of discussed in that there. And I know through the kind of education, through the community safety teams, they're doing lots of work with those children that may not be potentially engaged within other services. So, just to kind of reassure really that there's lots of work kind of doing within the strategies that we are doing to kind of pick up all groups of people.
Right. I've got Rose. I've lost somebody, but Rose Seaborn.
Sorry, Chair, I thought Liz was up, but
Liz, have you got Liz? Yeah, she was going.
Okay. Mine's about communities. Ensuring equality in communities involves various steps, such as promoting education on diversity and inclusion, advocating for policies that support equal rights, encouraging dialogue amongst diverse groups. My point is, how do we measure the need of our communities? Because very often, and in the past, it's certainly been the case that he who shouts loudest gets it. Yeah. And in another part, it's maybe they don't need it. If you take my ward and Crossy Kellogg ward, for instance, I got high numbers of children in this area including Green Meadow, St Giles, but in Crossicalog they've probably got more elderly people. So how do we look at the need of our communities rather than he who shouts the loudest, or if he has a park, then I should have a park, or if he has a green field, I should have a green field. I think it's about need, and how do we check that those needs are the right needs of our communities?
I'll come in on this one if that's okay, Councillor Seaborn. I'm really pleased to hear that question, because as some members will know, this is the very essence of what we're looking to achieve with our communities approach. And members on the scrutiny committee that's recently been through that will have heard me say quite a few times that that's exactly what we're trying to establish there. So there's a big piece of work that's been done based on community council footprints, but a big piece of work that's been done to establish exactly that. So against those key metrics, it may be access to green space, it may be educational outcomes, it may be physical health, it may be mental health, it may be loneliness. Against all of those different metrics of need, what are the figures telling us on a ward, on a community council by community council area? What we've also then done is cross-check that with perceptions from those local communities, so from the community councillors and the stakeholders who attend their sessions. And quite often, actually, it's been interesting where the data's been telling us one thing, the perception said, actually, I understand why the data's saying that, but that's not quite how it is on the ground here. The next step for that within the communities approach is where we are now, which is setting up groups at that very local level, at that community council level, to prioritise what actions they would like to see within that community. And that will form the basis then of how we influence policy, how we influence community activity at a local level, how we make sure that it's need that's driving it, rather than replicating and duplicating a service that we've got elsewhere across the borough. So that really is the essence of what we're trying to achieve with the community strategy. And to take it back to the earlier conversation, the metrics and the measures around how successful are we at achieving that are all set out in that strategy, and will be when we bring that to members for your consideration. So hopefully that will cover off exactly what you've raised there.
Thank you. And I'm long term, you know, what goes around comes around. So I might be in the position of having children now, but in 5 years' time, it might be more elderly people in my ward and more children in other wards. So it's about balancing and understanding how those communities change and interact as well. And if there's new housing in the areas, you know, what that brings in, whether it brings in elderly people, middle-aged people, working class. And the other point about our ward are that some are very affluent, but there's pockets of poverty in every ward, and that's what we've got to pick up. You might think that, you know, there's a lovely flourishing ward, you drive down the street and you see everything green and clean, but there's pockets of poverty everywhere as well, and we need to be aware of those. Thank you.
That's absolutely right. And actually, interestingly, some of the data that's come back has said that loneliness and isolation may not be a problem in some wards. When you scratch beneath the surface, that may be looking at an older population and not taking into account loneliness and isolation that exists amongst younger people in that area, which is why we've cross-checked it with those local perceptions. And just on your broader point around communities changing, again, that's something we're really, really acutely connected to with this strategy. So what we'll be producing at those local levels is a dashboard. So we're tracking and monitoring change against those indicators. So we can say, did the interventions we in the community put in place make a difference to drive this down? But is something else now going in the wrong direction, either because of demographic changes or because of our actions or inactions? Is something else changing? And that should allow us to be able to move much more quickly as a collective, as the community councils and others, to really start to react to those issues as they come up.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. Right, Rose, is that finished? Right, Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley.
Sorry.
The question I got it on recommendation 4E, you ensure young people have the opportunity to have a say on issues that affect them, in Article 12 of the United Nations. But with our mental health strategy, how do we look to support them, particularly after the COVID and everything else? Because the young people are suffering a lot with anxiety, mental health issues. How would we integrate that strategy to accommodate that?
If I can come in there again, Councillor Evans. So when we're looking at all these strategies, they all, as we said, all fall out from underneath that county plan, and some of those outcomes and objectives within that county plan relate to giving children the best start in life. And conversations that we've had are how does that relate to children's physical health as much as mental health as much as their physical health. What will follow off the back of that now is a service plan coming through from the Children and Families Directorate that takes into account that county plan objective. Now, within that, there's also an objective which is around making sure that young people feel connected, as you've said, that's linked into this strategy. Exactly the same process there. That's something where we'll have now a suite of outcomes that sit underneath that. They'll say this is what that means in practice, and then we'll have a service plan that says this is what we're going to do about it. These are the changes we're going to make. So we'll see that in the service plan, and members, I'm sure, will get the opportunity to challenge that when those service plans come forward for the 6-monthly monitoring.
If I could just add, Chair, if I could just add on that, Steve alluded to it earlier that we've just appointed a new Children and Young People's Participation Officer. So it'll be within their role then to make sure that all young people have their voices heard, whatever their background, disabilities, and that they're included on that. So there's a whole host of work doing around how young people will have their voice heard, where those platforms are going to be, how they can get involved in decision making. Previously we've had a young person come to the Public Service Board, so there's lots of different things around that to making sure that the young people have their voices heard and they're involved in decisions that affect them.
Can I come back, Chair? Yeah. The other part of that is, with the new regulations, a socio-economic part coming in, this will surely have a big impact on young people and families.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the cost of living crisis now is really kind of affecting, all families. There are more families in poverty now than were. So that is a huge area that we need to look at. And one of the objectives that we're kind of looking at through the Marmot Principles are children in poverty. How do we address those? What do we need to do to shift the dial and make sure that, children in Torfaen are not living in poverty? So I think the socio-economic duty comes more into our equality planning and that than ever it has before with the cost of living crisis. So that is, that's influenced throughout all decisions really, rather than just adding on. What about the socio-economic duty? It's a huge part of lots of our policies and plans going forward.
You right there, Steve?
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Kate.
I'm going to ask you another question because I don't think it's been asked. How do we play a part of Welsh Government strategies and plans relating to equality and diversity, the anti-racist and the LGBT action plan? How do you get that on the ground in the borough? Because obviously there are others as well. Because that how you fine-tune that for the particular communities of interest, I'm interested in that, because I think you've been doing a reasonable job over the years, and obviously you've got to update it as these things advance. I believe that's Kate, isn't it?
I'm happy to come in there, Councillor Ashley, if I may. Both of those action plans have some sort of specific sort of areas where of accountability, really. A lot lies with Welsh Government.
I can't eat it.
But there's also sort of expectations of things that local authorities are able to do. And some of those around the LGBTQ plus action plan are around ensuring that homelessness services are inclusive of the specific needs of LGBTQ plus people, ensuring staff are fully trained in relation to LGBTQ plus people's rights and barriers, and by monitoring feedback from service users. Generally, a lot of the expectation is around staff understanding, and that's around areas such as sort of care homes as well, and working with specialised LGBTQ plus asylum and refugee support services to engage and understand the needs of LGBTQ plus asylum seekers that may be settling in our areas as well. So it's very much about sort of intersectional equalities training that's devised and delivered to public sector organisations in line with the public sector equality duties. Similarly, around the anti-racism action plan, there's sort of similar sort of expectations, really. It's very much about sort of the empathy and the understanding of the needs of those particular groups. Welsh Government are currently out to recruitment on a post for Gwent, which will be sort of a coordination role that local authorities in Gwent will be able to link in with, and they'll kind of facilitate that dialogue between communities and ourselves as well, when we talked earlier about the kind of consultation and involving people in the solutions. And, you know, obviously, as has been mentioned, we need to, you know, respond in a way that is proportionate to need, and that, you know, that's a very important part of it as well. So yeah, we're working through those actions essentially, Chair, and looking at what is needed to be in the plan.
So there's quite an incredible amount of officers' time going into that particular amount of work, by the sound of it.
I think there is potential to be, yeah, and that is where we're kind of like, you know, today is welcomed as an opportunity to kind of get perspectives on what our prioritisation is, really, and to, you know, to fully understand that there could be potential resource implications in officer time, certainly, and also, you know, we're looking to clarify what Welsh Government are providing. You'll be aware WLGA have been funded by Welsh Government to provide training. We've had No Boundaries deliver a members seminar, and that's going to be delivered to sort of leadership team as well in February. So that there are sort of offers of support with this process as well, in the process of clarifying exactly what that looks like.
So that's one area where you could actually give us quite a lot of actual detail in terms of what's going on, as it were, in terms of numbers, etc.
Yes, I would certainly hope to.
Yeah, because members obviously always, no, I mean, with what you're talking about there. No, that would be welcome. Thank you for that. Rose Seaborn?
Thank you. I've got a question that came up in education and our school visit on our scrutiny committee, which is actually about early years and how do we promote our young children who are identified with additional learning needs or any special needs at all prior to them going into nursery, when we don't have the link with the health visitors and Iron Bevan Health Board that we should have. So that's a point that came up, because there's children going into school still in nappies, not potty trained, and we had no idea that they were coming in like that, because there's no link with our health visitors or our really early years officers of any kind. Thanks.
Who's going to answer that one?
I'll come in again there. Thanks for the question, Councillor Seaborn. I'm sure colleagues in education will be able to give you some more feedback in relation to the specifics on that. But one thing I did want to say, we've seen some really interesting, essentially pilot work being done by some of our schools, where they've adopted the community's approach that I've been describing. And they've been working really closely with health visitors, with the health board and with their wider community to try and drive up some of that. So they're seeing early intervention and prevention starting from preschool, and certainly from a young person's perspective, running all the way up until young people are starting secondary education. So they're very much seeing their role within the community at that sort of age, and health visitors are linked in to that process. We've also been having conversations jointly with the exec team of the health board, and this is certainly something that I think we know we share our objectives linked around Marmot, and we know that those objectives relate to every child having the best start in life. So this perhaps gives us a fruitful example now to explain in more detail why we should be looking at that joint working in early intervention and prevention. So as I say, colleagues may provide some more information to the committee afterwards, but hopefully that allays the immediate concern.
Thank you. I used the example of early years, but it is with all our partners, really. It's not just Iron Bevan Health, it's the police and the fire service and all our security services, to make sure our plans are linked into theirs, and the PSB should be working like that, and I'm assuming they are. So thank you.
Thank you, Rose. That's a really useful set of questions. We've only got two more general questions, but you're getting the idea, members, that there's suites of questions here. The next one, which you guys have asked us, I'm moving it on, is to discussion, it's on page 15, the bottom of how should this strategic equality plan impact on the workforce of Torfaen? What data, information or feedback could be collected and monitoring? So there we got data now. In order to ensure that we are identifying and addressing any inequality. That's specifically about our workforce. It could be about other things, but that's the question. Who's going to kick that one off? Come on.
I think we've touched on that, Chair.
Well, yes, but is any supplement to that at all? Maybe, but if we have, we have.
Councillor Williams has a question, Chair.
I thought Councillor Williams might come up. So go on then, David.
No, I would agree with Councillor Seaborn. I think we've gone into this, but I think what's quite helpful would obviously be to include within the strategy and the documentation the range of training that's available to staff. Obviously, then monitoring the numbers of take-up in relation to that, and obviously the opportunity to ask staff if they feel there's anything that's been missed. Those are the first points. Second thing is really, I would suggest, in the light of some of the comments, but also I think in terms of moving into the next element, to the impact on citizens, the extent to which some of those training sessions can be opened up to other people working in the public sector. So, for example, those working with community councils, or maybe some of the voluntary sector workers who are going to be working with the same set of citizens. It does strike me that in the same way that has been done with safeguarding, of actually trying to get the whole workforce community accessing and able to use the same training, we should be taking the same approach with equalities. So just an observation, but opportunity for comment.
Thank you, David. I already did mention data, information, feedback, be collected and monitoring. You're making a very good point. Stephen Vickers would like to come back on this. I'm sure he's got some ideas here as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think building on Councillor Williams' points and earlier points, actually, Councillor Seaborn's, the key to this, I think, you can address this issue of bias in one form or another, or equalities, or from both ends, can't you? You can, of course, actively tackle and educate our staff to be aware of some of those biases that will be inherent in the existing structures that we've got, or in our existing practices or existing culture. And I think that's important. One of the things that I'm really keen to do, though, as we go through building new communities models, as we reorganise the authority, is to really build from a sound base. So one of the reasons I'm really keen for the extended leadership team, it's not just leadership team, it's the extended leadership team. So there'll be all of the senior managers across the council will be attending that training in February. Is I want people to be aware of those biases as we are designing services from the ground up. I think that's a good way of trying to build out those risks, or build in a more equality into the way that we work. So these are the kind of things that I think we can report back on in the future. Some of it will be, and some of it's measurable in terms of counting widgets, so to speak, but some of it may well be us reflecting back to members more, qualitatively, I suppose, in respect of how successful we feel that we've been in some of that, and looking more towards outcomes as opposed to just counting numbers. So I think we can look at it from both ends, Chair, and that's probably something that scrutiny may want to consider.
Thank you for that, Stephen. Any members want to come in before I say something and move us on? Oh, deafening silence. Good. The next item, obviously, we've gone from workforce and what the council does to the similar question. And it says, should the strategic equality plan impact Torfaen citizens? Well, it does anyway, because a lot of the people that work for the council live in the area. And it asks the same question: what data, information or feedback could we be collecting and monitoring in order to ensure that we are identifying and correcting? I will make the I'll repeat that. Sorry, I mumbled that. In order to ensure that we are identifying and addressing any inequality. I would suggest, the way the team is working, that they probably are collecting this information at any rate. I've got Nick Haller here. We haven't heard from you, Nick, today.
What?
So, yes, please, what's your question, Nick?
Just looking at 4.9, the objective aims to ensure that people within the communities have their rights of abuse and violence looked at. I've just lost it on my screen.
You want to put the whole lot down or just that first
Yeah,
bit
it was
of it?
just that piece there. And I just really wanted to know, how does Torvine investigate how to engage with positive resolutions and the powers for the communities? I want to know how Torvine's going to engage with the communities to be able to resolve that.
Sorry, Councillor, can you repeat what the question is?
Sorry, I lost my screen on my thing. 3.9 talks about people from Torvine have the right to feel safe for violence and abuse. My question really is how Torvine will encourage positive engagement to resolve that. Sorry, I'm not coming over very well this afternoon.
You're right there, Nick.
You're
right.
It was 4.9.
Yeah, 4.9. Yeah, sorry.
4.9. Yeah. Thank you, Rose.
Sorry.
Thanks, Councillor Haller. Just kind of sort of generally on that around, you know, people feeling safe and included in our community, free from violence and abuse. We've recently re-established the Community Safety Partnership, so that's so Safer Torvine will be looking at a lot of those things within that kind of objective of how people, you know, feel safe within their communities. They live in more cohesive communities. So a lot of the work that the teams will be doing and our cohesion teams will be kind of making sure then that those people within communities have an arena to raise issues, to have those kind of discussions, to be able to bring forward any issues that they may have. I know, you know, as members, you have your members' surgeries and things like that. Lots of things come through to yourselves. So hopefully that route in then through yourselves and in through the community safety team, we can kind of get to hear about some of those views if there are kind of any community tensions or any community safety issues within the local authority. And then within the Safer Torvine, there will be an action plan then kind of looking at all of those kind of issues that come in. Around the board then sits the Violence Against Women, Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence team. We've got Brent Police, we've got the Youth Offending Service, we've got probation, all statutory partners that sit around there to be able to kind of feed back in and to you know, react and come back to any issues that may be raised. Does that kind of go somewhere to answer?
Yeah, just encouraging positive relationships within communities is obviously a key to this, isn't it? And how do you engage? How do you engage positive relationships within communities when you have instances going on? How do you talk to those people, and how do you engage with communities to be able to make communities feel safer?
Yeah, so I think, you know, lots of work that the team do, specifically in relation to young people then, and we do lots of work with, you know, Positive Futures. We have one-to-one mentoring. There's lots of engagement activities that we do with young people to find out what is happening in their world and trying to engage those, work with other kind of groups, but also the wider cohort then. We've got our engagement officers that will kind of go out and try and find out some of the issues that are going on there. There's lots of projects we link very much in with the play service and lots of the other services within the council to look at kind of families and how neighbourhoods and that are getting on together. So I know that there's lots of kind of work that's being done throughout the council to kind of engage communities to try and help communities get on better together and you know, share interests.
Yeah,
right. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, thanks.
Are you right there, Nick? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm fine on. Thanks. Yeah.
David Williams, you got some observations or questions? I'm not sure which.
No, thank you, Chair. I think it was obviously very helpful that we had a recent member seminar on the crime, the outline that Kate's given here about sort of community safety partnership, and I think one of the things I think that's going to be key here is the sharing of information across agencies, so that the council is aware if there have been, for example, particular peaks around hate crime reporting in particular areas, and I would think that's going to be an important part of that sort of monitoring process. I would also sort of highlight the fact that, you know, excellent work I think that's gone forward in schools in terms of things like sort of peer support around anti-bullying. So I think, you know, there's an opportunity here, I think, as we pull together the information to make sure that we are going across all the different departments of the council to bring that together. So, for example, it may be that community mentors may be a useful consideration to give support to those people in the community, if you like, in recognising a kind of community champion role. In a similar way, we recognise a council champion role for equalities or for environment, etc. So just a few suggestions and thoughts there, Chair.
Thank you. Did anyone respond to what David said? I was wanted to say something as well, because having done 10 years of this, I find the actual ability of having a department that can do what this whole business about community violence, abuse, and just general tension is really, really useful to have a department that does it, from, you know, things that happen in flats to almost the problem that we have in underpass in my ward, where resolution of that over a number of years, with issues with young people, issues with the community, we ended up taking an underpass away and putting a set of traffic lights in. Whether it resolved the problem, other members have had similar issues. That department helped kick that issue off. So it's a little bit more sometimes than just a simple issue. The thing that Dave Leach's new department with project work in with this sort of issue starts with an equality issue, a community feeling put upon, and that you're having to find solutions to quite large problems at times. So, Kate and David, I'd be interested to hear what your response is to what I've just said there.
Thanks, Councillor Ash. You know, I think you're right. One of the key things we've got to be careful of, though, is it's really useful for us to have interventions that we can put in place, but we've got to do them with the community, and we've got to make sure that we don't become overly focused on having a team in place to provide a response to a community, and that's the essence of what we're trying to achieve. So the project that you highlighted was exactly the right sort of thing. It was identified by the community to solve a problem in the community, and our role as a council became unlocking that problem, not doing to, not doing for, but providing the tools to help somebody do for themselves. Just to go back to Councillor Williams' point around community champions, that's certainly something I think for us to explore. And I know Councillor Williams will be aware of this. There's a balancing act for us in communities between formalising the role that somebody takes in championing a particular issue within a community and encouraging that, what I would call day-to-day neighbourliness that happens in a community that people don't want the reward for. If anything, they shy away from doing it because they fear they may get recognition that will lead to negative consequences for them further down the line. And the team at the minute are really thinking through what the balance is between identifying people in that champion's role, which is critical, and supporting people to feel that it's okay to be a good neighbour, to pop in and check on someone, to go and tell someone you shouldn't do that when they're doing something that is inappropriate. So we're really trying to find what that balance is, and that will vary community on community, depending on their appetite to challenge and the issues that are going on in each area.
If I may come back to that, David, I think that's also very much a role for members to take as well in supporting.
Chair, can I just come back in just on an earlier point that Councillor Williams made? You alluded to the member seminar around the Safer Torfaen, and I think that's a really kind of good way of saying what is going on. There's lots of duties, you know, the Equality Act, the socio-economic duty. There's lots of things that the council have to adhere to and have to be compliant with. But I think the member seminar are a really good way of us kind of sharing information, telling you what the team is, meeting the team, understanding what they do, whether that's in relation to community safety, cohesion, equalities, a new duty, serious violence prevention duty, whatever that is. So, you know, we kind of welcome any suggestions if there is anything that members feel we'd like to know more information about or want a better understanding. For example, anything around hate crime, anything around that, we'd be more than happy to facilitate a member seminar.
Thank you for that. I mean, I would almost make a comment on this. It is really, really valuable to have your team around. Members' political role and community role being able to do this, and it says that in that column there as well, and having your team to back up sometimes what hate crimes and community, what's the word? Conflict is the right word, and I believe that's there. Because at times you do get these things, you need to be able to resolve things between people, and it's a difficult one. And I mean, thanks for that. Any other members want to make a comment before I move on? Because we've actually come to quite a conclusion. I think there's been a very worthwhile bits of discussion here. Is there anything you feel we might have missed? It's your chance to round up on this if you want.
Chair, if I can come in, I think it's an excellent report, and I think the main issue is that this permeates, and I know we use the golden thread, but it permeates through every other plan and every other organisation that we're in touch with. So I welcome the report, and I think it's, it includes a lot of issues that we have to deal with in all sorts of walks of life. Thank you.
Thank you for somebody highly involved with education saying that, Rose, because I feel the same as well. And I'm sure David will, whoever's involved at our scrutiny chair level, because without the equality stuff in place, we... Councillor Jones...
Can I come in, Chair?
Yes, please.
Rose, just on that point you made, obviously I'm the executive member today, I sit in the cabinet meetings, I sit in lots of meetings when the cross-departmental discussions take place. And from my experience, Rose, and I've got a background of working for disabled organisations, as you know, and I think that the equality duties that we have do permeate right across this organisation. So I just reiterate what you've said, Rose. My experience is, as a council, we try really hard to ensure that equality impacts on everything we do.
Well, we can't answer that other than say that's a really good thing. Stephen, did you want to say anything before we go?
Only really, like I said in the beginning, to thank members for your time and for your commitment to the equalities agenda. It's really valuable to us as a small team of officers to get a widespread of sort of people looking at these different issues and giving their various input and considerations. So yeah, just want to thank you for that.
Councillor Williams would like to say as well. Go on, James Williams.
Yeah, no, I'd echo the points that I think it's a really good piece of work. A lot of things that go into this, and obviously it's also timely because the consultation is still ongoing. So it'll be interesting to see that brought back, as it were, in terms of final draft recommendations. My only suggestion is that it's very helpful, it will be very helpful, I think, to highlight key changes from the previous 5-year plan, particularly new legislative elements that have been brought into play. You mentioned, for example, the strategic balancing, some of the duties that have been there. So I think that makes it easier for members to monitor the change. So that's just trying to add a constructive suggestion.
We'll look at that round up. And
also to include within that the range of training opportunities that are there. So again, that is evident to both staff and members as a working document. So just some suggestions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Would Chief Executive like to say something as you're here, sir?
Well, only to thank members for what I think has been an excellent session. Really, some real insights and I think it's been really helpful to the officers to listen to your views, and we'll certainly take them on board, and we'll continue to develop in this area. I think it's great to hear members recognise how important this is. This is a priority for us as a council, and it feels a good space to be in, to know that we're well supported. So thank you, Chair, for an excellent session.
Well, thank you all officers and Chief Executive for being here, and thank you members for participating. And I don't know which you rounded it off last, but I echo what, equalities is just such an important issue for our staff, our residents, and everybody. So thank you very much indeed for participating. and those that you didn't, get an idea of what happens when it comes to scrutiny, when it comes to council. So thank you very much, and you're all free to go, as they say. And thank you, Councillor Jones. You didn't go on too much. Thank you. And kept very succinct on this matter. So we're now looking at what we do for scrutiny, and I'm sure there'll be some good points coming out. Okay. It's silence again. So we give it a few minutes. Are you there, Rebecca?
Yes, Chair, I'm here. Just give us 1 more minute, and then we can make a start with members' recommendations.
I'm going to suggest that Rebecca takes us through this. You then throw your 5 in, and we'll see where we go. All right? I'm pretty certain there'll be some good stuff.
Okay, Chair, back to you. We're ready now. Thank you.
Right. Okay. What it says in all it says here is, I just said thank you, executive member and everybody there. I'd like to invite you to leave. We've done that. Agreed recommendations. It says in my file, could I remind committee of the meeting that still in formal progress? Thank you for your questioning. Can you invite recommendations considered by the executive member? Now, I thank you actually for a very good load of questions and observations. Just remember that I think there was some good questions, good set of views. Though, considering we only had 4 questions, there's some good stuff coming. So if you'd like to go through it, and then those of you that had questions around that, just throw it in there as well, along Rebecca. But let Rebecca just put them in. I'm sure she made observations, because that was quite clear, I thought.
Thank you, Chair. So if I can just guide members to the scrutiny activity that's laid out on page 18 there. So you'll see that today you've been asked to consider the proposed revised equality objectives for 2024 to 28 and determine whether the proposals address TCBC's commitment to achieving greater equality as an employer and in the performance of all aspects of its business. So if I can just refer you back to page 15, then you'll see the objectives clearly set out there. So in terms of those actual objectives, are you satisfied with each of those? Is there anything you'd like to strengthen within any of those particular objectives? You're all satisfied with those specific?
We look at key messages is what we're looking at, is it?
So can I ask about timelines? Because Rose made a valid point earlier about making sure everything comes together. I mean, if you've got the county plan and you've got all them strands, surely we need to make sure the timelines are there so they meet up and join up with everything else.
Just a minute, can I come in as chair here? The purpose of the report is to consider the revised equality objectives, determine whether they address TCB's commitment to achieving greater equality, and offer views and recommendations. That's the 3, isn't it, Rebecca, we've got to do?
That's correct, Chair. Yes, so I'm just on 4.4, those specific objectives that they've laid out now that will go into the new strategy. So are members satisfied that those objectives are the right objectives to go into the new equality strategy?
Should we, yeah, everybody's satisfied. We can go through one by one if you want, or we just take them en bloc.
No, I think members are satisfied en bloc with those. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Okay.
So in terms of making recommendations, they on the wider remit of the strategy, would members like to put forward any recommendations before I highlight any points? Councillor Seaborn?
Yes, please.
Rose Seaborn?
Thank you. I think my point about making sure that our other documents are up to date with anything in the plans, like the Constitution, such as access, and it needs. If somebody is reading the Constitution, it needs to reflect our plans. If there's something in our plan that isn't in the Constitution, then they need to update. But it's not just the Constitution, it's the equality plan should run through every plan. And it needs a link to say, this plan includes the equality plan, or some kind of link to every other plan, to the equality plan, because it should run through every plan, whether or not it's equality in staffing issues, HR issues, and all our plan should have the equality line, golden thread running through it to link into everything else. So,
ready.
yeah. And the other point, I think, was the question at council about, you know, utilising, it's our community and our local businesses thrive on the money that we spend. And perhaps we should look at a little bit more into promoting and securing our local businesses.
So, sorry, can I just clarify on that then, Councillor Seaborn? So, in terms of how would you recommend that ties in with this strategy? So, focus on
a focus on local businesses. We do probably in the procurement plan, Bex, because you know we put something out there where we don't have an exception to if it is a local plan, and it doesn't have to be the cheapest all the time. It could be good quality. It's actually touching on the environment as well. They don't have to travel that far. If we're going to bring a firm in from Swansea or Cardiff, then we've got to account for all that. So it's about utilising our local businesses to give them some of the business to actually spend in Torfaen.
So what you're saying, equality is spending local?
Well, everything local, isn't it? If it's being produced locally, if it's being manufactured locally, if it's you know, we need to think about what we are supplying for the people who pay our council taxes.
Right. Okay. Next, please. Go do.
I have something on 3.9. It talks about abuse, but it doesn't talk about social media abuse, or it doesn't have anything about social media. And we know that social media is becoming an abusive part of life. And we talk about abuse, but we only talk about abuse in one frame. We don't talk about it as a bigger frame. I don't know if that matches anything that would be useful.
It's a very good point.
Because there is an awful lot of social media abuse, but we talk about abuse that's potentially happening between two people directly in front of each other, but we don't talk about social media abuse. 3.9.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. So obviously, you mentioned you didn't particularly raise that during the course of discussions.
No, I know,
if I pop that within the comments, just that they're mindful that when they address that within the strategy about the hate crimes, that they are conscious of that social media hate crime as well. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I was when I asked the question.
That has been raised at seminar, hasn't it, Rebecca?
I believe so, Chair, but it's no harm in reinforcing that in the
comments.
No,
please reinforce it. Thank you. Anybody else? Is there any other points? Dave Williams had a few points, I think, as well, didn't you, Dave?
I think it's just personally, I find it helpful to see if Rebecca has captured any particular points to feedback.
That's the point I was saying, yeah.
Comment.
Thank you, Chair. So I had the one that Councillor Seaborn's already raised in terms of updating documents such as the Constitution.
Yeah.
There was one about getting the message out to people and sharing the consultation, ensuring that all the relevant groups, as wide as possible, are consulted on that. And I believe they did make the offer to obviously share that consultation with you, and you can go back to them if you have any suggestions. I don't think I had anything else that formed any particular recommendations. There was the one, I don't know if you want me to write that in terms of the commentary, Councillor Williams, you raised about highlighting the key changes in the new plan, whether when the report comes back, that is a focus of that.
That was a point David made, a big point about.
I think that would be helpful, simply because it sort of, means you can see progress from one to the other. And the second point, which was about sort of perhaps inclusion within that of some of the range of training that's available, and how that will be monitored, because I think we've seen things happen, like some of the recent training for members. So I think it's just useful to actually include that within your plan, because it's part of how you're delivering it.
I did raise the whole business about the action in the community and how this equality plan does work as a community work as a useful tool in the community, and I still hold by that. That's a function I think it does well. It does need in the commentary if it's.
Yes, Chair, I'll add that into the commentary. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very valued by members, I think. The other thing I think, I say as chair, and I think I reflect on it because it was said a lot, was generally this plan works well for us, and it goes with Rose's thing about it should go through all the work of the council and our interaction with the community. I think that's what you were saying, and that it addressed by all the work. So I mean, I think it's highly valued by members, is what I would say.
Councillor Williams, Chair.
I think it's just a reflection, obviously, Chair, because what we had included was the last plan. The next one is yet to be written because it's going through a consultation process. So I think one of the points we made was that we would want to see the draft plan prior to final publication to ensure that it has captured many of the points that we've articulated today.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Dave. You put it well. The other aspect which I was trying to draw out, and it's said in this, is that the integration into the well-being and the other work that we do, which is a bit policy wonkish, but that needs to be demonstrated. I did try and draw that out. Where was it? Item 4. The strategic equality plan feeds into the county plan under the strategies and the well-being. It's similar to what Rose was saying, but at a high level.
Thank you, Chair. We've nothing further to add from the chamber.
No, I think we got there. We've got quite a lot of meat out of that one. Members satisfied that that'd be a good response?
Happy.
Anybody else? David, you got anything you want to add to that, Rose?
Rose is not gone. Rose is gone.
Okay, so she's happy. So thank you very much, everybody. And that was, I thought we did quite a lot there with what normally it's a fairly quick one. It's still only 13:38, and it's quite a quick response to that. I hope you're satisfied. Bear in mind, this is your scrutiny meeting, not my scrutiny meeting. And thank you very much for being here. And I, despite my only being out of hospital for a week, I thoroughly enjoyed that, and it's been good scrutiny as far as I'm concerned. Thank you very much indeed. Rebecca,
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Can you stay on a minute, if you would, Rex?
Thanks, Chair.
Cheers. Thank you very much indeed.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.